Hello, everyone. I am Julianne Meyer. You are watching Own Your Wellness, and guess who's finally married? This little lady right here. It's been a long time coming. You guys have been on the journey with me, and it has finally happened. It was such a wonderful, magical day, and I don't remember a lot of it. I think I do, but honestly, people keep telling me about all these things, and here I was thinking I was so present, and I missed so much, even though I was in the moment, which is kind of how life works. But anyway, it was wonderful, and there will be pictures on my website soon, so you guys can see that as well. It was a wonderful day. And enough about that, because we are not here to talk about my wedding. We've been talking about my wedding for months now. So I have an amazing guest for you guys today. You're going to love him. He is such a good-hearted person, so intelligent, and he's here to speak with all of us today. So let's bring him on. Devin Thorpe, welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Julianne, thank you so much for having me, and congratulations. I'm so happy for you. This is a big deal. You don't do this many times in a lifetime. So
and
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Well, it's funny because both my parents got married 3 times. And then we actually got married on my dad and stepmom's 40th wedding anniversary. So I think they figured it out.
They figured it out. Yeah, 40 years. That's a good run. That's a good run.
Yeah.
That's professional grade marriage right there.
Exactly. Yeah. But anyway, enough about that. I would love to, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while now. We connected a while back, but I would love to start out with you sharing a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm happy to share. You know, I call myself a champion of social good because I try to inject kind of that goal of helping people do more good into everything I'm doing. And, you know, of course, I'm not perfect. Golly, I'm like everyone else. I'm a human being, but, you know, I do this on my podcast, and I recently launched a new company called the Super Crowd, and all these things that we're doing. We're trying to help people in addressing and solving some of the world's big problems. Like, I think a lot about 3 big problem areas, more than problems discretely, but I think about the environment and climate change. I think about global health. And I know that's something that you think about a lot and help people with dramatically. And I love that you're doing that. And then I also think about kind of social justice issues. I look at some of what goes on in the world today, and I see problems that we can overcome to make the world a little more fair, a little more equitable. So anyway, that's kind of me.
And I think that that's absolutely amazing, because there's not a lot of people out there that are willing to take a look at things that maybe need to be changed, or people that need help, because we're not even aware of things outside of our own personal circle. So how do you bring that awareness to people?
Yeah, my approach is to generally see problems through the lens of people working to solve them. And so the good news is that although I spend a lot of time thinking about the world's big problems, almost always I'm thinking and talking about that in the context of discussing the work of someone who is doing something to really make a difference in addressing that problem. And so it does give me a sense generally of optimism. And I hope people that are kind of in my universe feel that optimism, not only from me, but genuinely in themselves as they begin to contemplate, wow, the world has these issues, these problems, these challenges, but hey, there are good people working on them. I can join them, I can support them, and we can solve these problems. They don't have to persist.
I like that idea, because I know a lot of people, myself included, we have this idea that maybe we're small, and who am I, and how could I make a difference? And it's just little old me. So it's one of those things where we don't even really realize that it starts with us, and that it's kind of has this ripple effect outwards anyway. So
Yeah.
what would you say to somebody who thinks maybe they're too small to make a difference?
Yeah, it's funny as you say that. My mind flashed back to something. It's a little bit of an old story, but I love this. You remember the ice bucket challenge? I guess that was nearly a decade ago, right?
My
But
gosh.
I think so there are 10-year-olds who don't know what we're talking about, but you know, the, they were trying to raise money for ALS, and they'd been trying to do this for years and years and years, and uh, people started dumping ice water over their own heads, usually with help, and challenging people to either do the same or donate to ALS. And over the course of a summer, the ALS Association or Society or whatever it was, they raised $100 million.
Wow.
Now, the remarkable thing is, uh, this is a group that traditionally raised like 3 million every summer, right? So this was like 30 times normal. This like worked phenomenally well. But it's interesting. There were a lot of people who were saying, well, this is stupid. What good does it do to dump cold water over my head? That's not going to help anyone. And
Mhm.
yet, I'm here to tell you, it did. It raised so much money. I mean, the lives saved since then can hardly be measured. This is a huge, big deal. And it was all because, there was probably a ratio of 10 to 1, maybe 20 to 1 of people who were dumping water over their heads and not donating, right? A lot of people
Mhm.
did that, and it didn't matter, right? Because that was the whole point, either dump or give. Um,
Mhm.
but a lot of people, they didn't ask Oprah Winfrey to do it, but she did it. They didn't ask Bill Gates to do it, but he did it. Lots and lots of people, and of course, Bill Gates dumped the water and gave $100,000, and I think Oprah did too. So this was huge. I mean, it's just amazing. But it was all one at a time. Every action was one person making a difference with something as trite or silly or dumb as dumping water over their head. So, yeah, everybody matters. We all matter. Sometimes our ripples are bigger than other times, but we all matter.
I love that as an example because it is. It's literally dumping water, cold water, ice water over your head.
Mhm.
And yet by doing that, it helps make it go viral. Just one person turns into a few more. And then, of course, like you mentioned, Oprah and Bill Gates doing both. I know a lot of people that wouldn't have thought to have donated if they hadn't heard of the challenge and thought, that's pretty cool. Now I'm
Yeah.
curious who came up with that idea.
Yeah, it grew out of a golf tradition in the UK somewhere. But the tradition was at the end of the round, I think the loser would take, they had a little cooler full of ice for the beer, right? And sodas and stuff. So they take that and dump it over the loser's head. I think that's kind of as people have analyzed this to death, that's where they chase this back to. Somebody did that for ALS or some other charity, and ALS picked up on it.
Oh
And it
my God.
worked. Boy, did it work.
It most certainly did. I think that that's a really
Yeah.
good example. And then I can't believe it's been 10 years.
Yeah, I'd have to check, but I think it was 2014, so maybe it's only 9 years, but it's
Oh,
been a
well,
minute. It's been a minute now. Yeah.
it doesn't feel that long ago. Of course, the whole
No.
COVID situation kind of warped
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we all kind of lost 3 years, it feels like, in a way, right?
Yeah,
Just
it
yesterday, it
happened.
was 2019, and now look at it.
Life was just trucking along day to day, and then all of a sudden there was this major upset.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's
It's just
interesting.
crazy.
So,
Yeah.
how do you? I'd love for you to explain a little bit more about how it is that you help.
Sure, sure. There are lots of ways I try, and we can argue about whether I do, but I'll tell you some of the ways I try. So, one of the things that I've been doing for a long time now, for more than a decade, is I've been doing a podcast. It actually started out as just a YouTube show, and it's become a podcast, and I'm hoping to work with you to get it on your channel here and join you. And so, this is, growing slowly, but for me, I actually tried to quit at the end of 2019 and came back to it in part because I just love doing it. But as you can imagine, I actually had a chance to get Bill Gates on the show, and you can imagine that. I apologize for describing him as kind of the high watermark, but in a way, it's hard for anyone else to have the brand recognition that he is. I've had a number of celebrities and a lot of CEOs and big important people, but none with the Bill Gates name recognition. But we're always talking about this broad idea of how we're going to solve big problems, and it's just so uplifting for me to have these conversations. I just love, with a capital L, doing it, and I enjoy sharing it. I enjoy all the little pieces of the technology involved and sort of the magic of it. In fact, I started the show as a YouTube show when I was writing for Forbes, and Google invented this way to live stream to YouTube. And I said, I am down for that, because it's basically, having my own CNN. So I had kind of a distribution channel with Forbes. So I thought, this is going to be great. So I started doing this as a live show on YouTube via Forbes. Just had a ball. In any case, we've kept doing it. Now I've had 1,500 guests on the show and I've had so much fun. It's just been great. I want to believe that by talking to people about solutions, we help them advance their message and mission, that we help them raise money and make connections. Over the years, I've had some wonderful, inspiring stories come back to me of people who tell me that they made a connection, made a difference. I remember I profiled one guy who was deploying solar-powered computers with sort of a micro internet archive in classrooms in Kenya.
Oh,
So
wow.
these are in places where there's no internet, no computers, and no electricity, right? So they by using solar, they solved the electricity problem, and then they delivered tablets for all the students to use as computers, so they could have their first exposure in the middle of, we would think of it as nowhere. And so they deployed all this cool, remarkably affordable technology, and did this as a Rotary Club, and began expanding this around. And it was fun. I kind of stayed connected with the guy who was doing this over many years. That was also back in 2014. And over again, he told me, you wrote that story about me for Forbes, and I get questions from people all the time. I tell them how we do it, and now they're doing it in some other place. And so that model just rippled, naturally. And he was so kind. He never took credit. He didn't want ownership. This was about helping kids that were in challenging circumstances. And it was really magical. So, that's the kind of way that I hope the podcast helps. I can talk. I feel like I've talked too long.
Oh, no,
but I'm happy to
not.
tell you. I'm happy to tell you about the Super Crowd, which is my new thing. If you're interested, would you like
Yes,
to know about
absolutely. But before that,
Okay.
tell podcast, where can people, all the places people can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all the regular places, but Superpowers #4 Good. Superpowers for Good is the URL where you can subscribe to the newsletter. And I should add the URL to that logo, because it's the number
Well,
4 rather than the word 4 in the URL. But in any case, you can subscribe to my newsletter there and see all the old episodes. I think we've got 4,000 articles plus now on there. So there's a lot in the archive, books and books worth. But yeah, I'd love to tell you a little bit about the Super Crowd, which is kind of my new thing. We've recently launched this, but a year ago, we held our first virtual event, Super Crowd 22, and we invited people who are working in the impact crowdfunding arena to join me. And let me tell you about that. So when we talk about impact crowdfunding, we're talking about really the intersection of two broader worlds. There's this community of people doing impact investing on one road over here. And so they're investing money with the idea that there is some sort of social outcome that is derived. And, you know, you can think about investing in municipal bonds that help to build public transit. That would be an impact investment. You could think about investing in all kinds of different things, like a lot of people invested in Tesla as an impact investment before it went public, right? The idea was, hey, we could help create an electric car industry. Worked pretty well. You know, the very first investors, I think I did the math, and I hope I did this right, but the very first investors in Tesla have made 1 million times their money.
Wow.
Let that sink in for a minute. That is why Elon Musk is the richest person in the world, right? Depending on the day. But 1 million times the money. And he was already rich when he did Tesla. And so then, so impact investing is this one road. And so the other road is investment crowdfunding. And so we're more of us are familiar with GoFundMe when we think about crowdfunding, and people have really mixed feelings about that. I will admit. We can maybe think of Indiegogo, Kickstarter when we think about crowdfunding, but investment crowdfunding is relatively new and growing quickly. And what we see are websites like Start Engine, WeFunder, Republic, where people can actually go and make investments in companies, sometimes in amounts under $100. There's one website that specializes in investments that start at $10 You can go and invest and get a return on $10, and there are no fees, right? So you can invest anyway, it's really exciting. I just love this space. And so in this intersection of investment crowdfunding and impact investing, we have what I call impact crowdfunding. So we had a conference last year to sort of organize some of the minds in this community around this space. Had 250 people show up. I hate to emphasize this, but as a new startup, it was important that this work economically. It did. We made a little profit on the event. And so we organized Super Crowd 23 earlier this year, and that was successful. But people keep asking us to do local in-person events, because virtual events are fun and interesting and educational, but not like getting together and actually sipping a cold one with someone while you're chatting about impact crowdfunding, right? So we did a little capital raise ourselves just recently. We just completed it last week. And now we have the working capital we need to go out and organize some of these local events. So we're going to start doing small local impact crowdfunding events around the country, all under the brand of Super Crowd. So we're very, very excited about that. And we'll continue doing virtual events. We'll be doing monthly webinars, and our next one's coming right up. There'll be one on July 19th, but I suspect this may come out after that date. And if it does, there will be one in August too. We'll do it every month. That's why we call them monthly. Okay. So that's a little bit about the Super Crowd.
Awesome. I love that. On that note, we are going to go to a commercial break. So we're going to be back in just a minute. And for those of you who are watching us live, thank you so much for being here. We do need to go to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue on this conversation and get a little bit more clarity. I think that Devin described it well, but let's see how you can join and be a part of this and make a difference for yourselves. We'll be back in just a moment.
When drug or alcohol addiction take over, things begin to disappear. Your friends, your family, and eventually, you. Recommended by Dr. Phil, New Method Wellness can help get your life back with individualized treatment plans for dual diagnosis clients. New Method Wellness provides the most highly credentialed treatment in a safe and welcome environment. Call New Method Wellness for your free consultation and ask about our national accreditations. Together, we can put the pieces back together.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's bring our guest back on. Devin Thorpe, welcome back. There you are. Can you hear me? Oh, you're on mute. Hold on a second. Let me unmute you. It won't let me. There we go.
Yeah, sorry.
There we go. I'm not sure what happened, but that's what happens when we're recording. Who knows?
Yes.
Because you
I'm
and I
so
talked about
thrilled
it.
to be back with you, back in the room.
No, it's funny
Yeah.
because for those that are watching, I literally made this comment about being muted when we come back. I must have accidentally hit it on the way in. But anyway.
It's all good. It's all
ironic. But let's
Yes.
get talking again because I want to get as much information out there for everybody that is watching. So these events, who are the types of people that will come to them? Is it people who are looking for money, looking to invest? What are some more details?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked because it's both, and both is everybody. That's really my mission on this for the super crowd is to help everyone see that you can be part of the solutions to the world's big problems and you can make money doing it. Now, for some, that's about starting a business that has some social impact. Maybe it's just to make your own community better, right? You think about how many communities we've driven through with boarded up storefronts, right? How much better would that community be with vibrant business sectors downtown, right? And that's really a problem in rural America, right? That there's this kind of dying stuff going on. So it can be as simple as that. It can be as dramatic as bringing new technology forward to solve climate change, right? You know, there's this whole huge spectrum, right? And scale and opportunity, and all of it kind of works with crowdfunding for those entrepreneurs. But every entrepreneur needs to raise money that's, you know, via crowdfunding, right? And so the exciting thing is we've been kind of socialized over the last 100 years to think of investing in businesses directly as something rich people do or people on Wall Street do. And now the regulators have set up a system with required disclosures and regulated intermediaries to help ordinary people like you and me make investments, like I was saying, as small as $10 in a a small business. And if we do that with an eye toward making the world better, there are just tremendous opportunities when, whether we're talking about backing a little business in our own community or backing diverse founders who are often overlooked by Wall Street and sometimes even by banks. We can be a part of the solution for them, or whether it's people who are working on solving a problem that we care deeply about. And we all have different, priorities, and that's great. So just about everyone can find a company or project that they want to fund that will align with a sense of purpose and mission for them as an investor. And that gets me excited. And so I want to try and convince everyone, this isn't just about professional investors. It's not just about wealthy people. This is about teachers and police officers and nurses and everyone else participating in this ecosystem at the level we can, whether that's $10 or $100, and whether that's once a year or once a month. We can slowly, over time, build portfolios that provide financial returns, even as we're working to solve problems and we're supporting these great entrepreneurs. So we want to bring entrepreneurs and investors together, and magic happens.
I think that's pretty amazing because when I was younger, I had a money manager, and she was always talking about the stock market and all that, but it seemed very impersonal. And I've always been the kind of person that if I believe in something, and it's all gut anyway, which is probably not the smartest thing, but I would much rather put my money in a person versus some stock that I've never, I don't know, it's supposed to do well because somebody told me that.
Yeah. That's a really important point. Let me just insert a key thought. And sometimes people ignore this reality in the stock market. I love to invest in the stock market, and I think the stock market is a good thing in so many ways. But here's the reality. If you buy shares in Tesla today, Elon Musk doesn't get the money. Some dude on Wall Street who decided to sell today because you wanted to buy at that price got the money, right? That money doesn't go to Tesla. It goes to some other investor. And when you think about that, you realize, it kind of doesn't matter to Tesla very much if I buy shares in that company. But if you talk to an entrepreneur who's raising money via crowdfunding, he might be thrilled to get $100, or she might be ecstatic to get $10 from you for her business, or $1,000. So it really is different, because when you're investing via crowdfunding, that money goes to the little company you're supporting, and that is game changing, right? That's different you really are changing the game when you invest that way for yourself and for others. The reality is some crowdfunding investments are going to suck. They're going to, the people are going to, not be successful. They're not going to do any good with the money. They'll have no impact. They won't make any money for you. But some will blow the doors off, right? And you'll put in $100 and get $1,000 back. Or you put in $100 and get $10,000 back eventually. Right? So there are tremendous opportunities, and like this website that does $10 at a time, they only do what they call bonds, just loans, right? So they're helping people with small businesses borrow $50,000 or $100,000, $10 at a time. And so you put in your $10 and you start getting interest payments and principal the next month. So if you put in literally $10, you'd get like 72 cents every month until the principal and interest is paid back. And it would, just be added to your checking account. So cool. I love it.
What I think is cool is how excited you are about it.
Yes. I'm so excited about 72 cents. But think about this. Forever we've been told we can't invest, we can't do it. It's too risky. It's too, you have to be too smart. And now anyone, who doesn't have $10?
Yeah.
Almost anyone in the world, anyone in the country could go and do $10 a month at it. The website is thesmbx.com. I don't get any money from them. They don't pay me. It's not a deal. But if you go to thesmbx.com, you can go invest $10 in a business that will start paying you back next month. And that is just so cool. So incredibly cool, because it matters to them and it matters to you.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Exactly. No, I think that's really amazing. I had no idea that even existed out there.
Yeah,
And
nobody does. Nobody does.
yeah.
I like to think I'm an expert in this space, and I've been talking about it for a decade. Do you know when I discovered the SMBX?
I have no idea.
Like 6 months ago.
Wow.
I'm embarrassed that it took me so long. They haven't been around that long, only about 3 years, but it's just so wonderful. It's exciting to discover these new things going on all the time. So I just love this space, as you can tell.
Yeah, but that's what makes it fun, because a lot of seeing your excitement, at least for me, takes a lot of the fear out of the idea of looking into it, because it just seems fun now, as opposed to this big chore, and I don't know, and I need somebody to help me. And
yeah. So we actually created about 18 months ago, we created a little club. We call it the Impact Cherub Club. And it's kind of an informal thing, but it's just a group of my friends, and anyone can come. We're happy to have anybody. So if any of your people want to join us, we'd love to have them. Just have them visit impactcherub.com, and they can sign up to come. It's no fee. We'd love to have them. But we get together and we look at companies to invest in every month. And most of us, as we are doing this, are thinking about investing $100 a whack, right? So this is not, there are some people in the group who are quite well off, but most are not. We're just ordinary folks who are trying to figure out where we can have the most impact and make some money at the same time. And we're learning, right? We're learning. We're getting better at this every month. We're getting a little bit better at doing the due diligence and trying to figure out what makes a good investment. And so we share what we learn with each other. And it's really been genuinely fun. It's been genuinely fun. I want to encourage people to participate. Would love to have.
Yeah, you don't have to do it alone.
That's right. That's right. This is a social thing as well as a personal thing. So, yeah.
I like that. There's something that you said that I kind of want to circle back on. And you mentioned the word diversity. So I wasn't aware of this, and I'd love for you to share. Are there certain people or certain groups that are maybe overlooked when it comes to the investment world?
Yeah. There's this group of people you probably aren't super aware of. Oh, you may. I shouldn't speak for you, but have you ever heard of women? About 98% of venture capital goes to companies led by men, and half of the population are women, right? And non-binary people. And then, in addition to that, we're seeing that people in most minority groups are also not well represented in venture capital circles. There's this real pattern, and for a long time, venture capitalists bragged about this. Not this statistic, right? They bragged about their process, and their process for a long time was, if you want to pitch a deal to us, get a quality introduction. That means you've got to work through your network to connect with us with a quality, handshake from somebody. So you think about that. I like to, I don't like stereotypes, but let's picture a Black woman in Baltimore and compare that to a white guy who just graduated from Stanford in Palo Alto, right? Which one is more likely to have a network that includes a good connection to a venture capitalist on Sand Hill Road in Palo Alto, right? Well, it's pretty clearly the guy who went to Stanford, right? that's a dumb process, right? But so for
Yeah.
years and years, venture capitalists sort of bragged, that's our process. You prove to us that you are resourceful by getting that quality introduction. And that resourcefulness is what we want to back. Well, it was a highly gendered, highly discriminatory process, even though it sort that you could say it was not, right? Because the woman in Baltimore was eligible. There was
Mm-hmm.
no policy that said we don't look at Black women and their opportunities, but she was just much less likely to have a network that could reach that venture capitalist. So I think that's kind of why it's happened. It isn't that venture capitalists intend for that to happen. What is interesting to me about this discrimination against women is that this has been well documented now. I remember the first time it hit my radar, and I wrote about it for Forbes, was over a decade ago. And it has not improved at all over the past decade. What we do see, and I should point this out, is that in the crowdfunding world, women, by some measures, do better than men. And by almost all measures, women and minorities are doing better than they do in other arenas, including bank financing. And so it does seem to be working. Now, that said, what we see in terms of scale is that the crowdfunding arena is still tiny.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got to grow it, I think, with some intentionality to make sure that 10 years from now, it isn't just bigger, but that it persists in allocating capital more on the basis of what I would call merit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that we're not looking and screening out gender and diversity questions, but we're supporting them by design to make sure that we're not leaving anyone out who's got a good idea and a great business.
Well, I think that that's kind of a really good point in the idea of people are being overlooked that have these phenomenal ideas. And how does that really further society if, because they happen to be a Black woman, for example, that they're not really going to be seen and heard? That doesn't seem like that would be good for anybody.
No, it isn't. It isn't. And
yeah.
You think about Black women in Baltimore. I want to think about the women who have recently graduated from Johns Hopkins with an incredible education, and may be able to come out with some med tech thing that is going to change the world. They and their colleagues. I mean, they are just as likely to be capable, brilliant, and bright, and add value as the white Stanford dude that finished his MBA at Stanford. So we've got to fix this. I see crowdfunding as a tool for doing this. And also, there's another thing I think I expect to see, and we're starting to see hints of this in the tech community, in what they call the fintech world, is that more and more investments are being made via platforms and portals, and many of them are aggregating all of the data across all of the portals. And so we're seeing now more and more that there are places people can go and see all of the available deals, including big investors, super wealthy investors, and ordinary investors like me, right? So people who aren't rich can go and see everything. Now, there's some things we're not allowed to invest in, but many we can. And I love this, because what this is doing is it's bringing together all of these markets, right? So that eventually investors of like you and me will invest alongside institutional investors like Kleiner Perkins in Silicon Valley, right? The big venture fund. Or A16Z, right? So we're going to see all these cool things we get to invest in at the same time, on the same terms that wealthy investors do. I think that's kind of an exciting world to live in, where the big investors sometimes rely on the crowd, and the crowd sometimes relies on the big investors to make smart decisions, and we work together genuinely to figure out where the best opportunities are, and do that in a way that is completely supportive of every community, right? So I get excited about the potential here. It's really a fun future to think about, and we're leading into that now.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that I'm thinking about, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but for me, this idea of finding a different way of funding people. I like this, instead of trying to fix an institution or call it broken. And while I don't necessarily agree with that, I like coming up with solutions more than complaining about problems. So
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It is so much fun, and there's one of my favorite aggregating sites where you can go see the deals that are available via crowdfunding is called kingscrowd.com. And so you go to King's Crowd and you start searching this. And if you start looking for, diverse founders or LGBTQ founders, or you start looking for social impact deals, clean tech kinds of deals, people that are working on climate change, whatever you're looking for, right, you can find it. And you'll realize very quickly that there are a lot of deals in almost every niche. Whatever interests you, you'll have really kind of a whole buffet of options to think about investing in. And many of them you can start investing, with $100 or less. So
I love that.
I love it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So on that note, it is time for us to go to one more commercial break. We're going to be back in just a minute. And I said hello to everybody who's watching us live. Now it's time for me to say hello to all of you who are watching us on demand. When we come back from commercial, we are going to continue with this conversation. And I don't even know where we're going to lead it, because I have so many different questions. So you better come back and see where this goes, because it's going to be interesting. I can guarantee that. We'll be right back.
Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers, while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversation. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's bring our guest, Devin Thorpe, back to the show. Welcome. Oh, we're muted again. Hold on a second. There we go. I got to do this. Why won't it let me unmute you? I don't know why this keeps happening. Give me 1 second. There we go. I don't know why that happened. But we are back and we are almost out of time. So
Thrilled to be here.
It is good to have you here. I actually have a really good question to ask that I think will benefit the audience greatly and me. Okay. You mentioned before about how people can invest as little as, say, $10 or $100. I'm curious, are there any other major misconceptions because of this whole idea that maybe people aren't aware of? Because I know that I didn't know that you could invest $10 or $100. I thought for sure 1,000, 100,000, whatever, bigger money than $10 for sure.
Yeah, and it is exciting, and there are all kinds of misconceptions, and a lot of this grows out of past truth, right? Mm-hmm. You probably remember learning in school. You and I, even I, was not around in the 1920s, but back in the 1920s, right, there was a lot of speculation in the stock market. And because there were no limits on debt, people could do crazy things like borrow $100 from a cousin, put all $100 in the stock market and borrow against the stock that they just bought and keep buying more and more and more and more. And so the 1929 stock market collapse was fairly foreseeable. It was a little bit like tulips in Denmark in, what was it, the 1400s. And it's the same kind of thing. Not Denmark, it was in the Netherlands. Sorry. Sorry, people. In any case, so there were all these rules that came about. The 1933 Securities Act and the 1934 Act and the 1940 Act really still govern most of the securities markets today. And among the things they did is to make it very difficult to get a company public so that it can trade to ordinary investors. Mm-hmm. And after the dot-com bust back in 2000, regulators and legislators and Congress made it even more difficult to go public. And of course, then in 2008, 9, 10, we saw the economy in the United States just crater. And Congress was interested in that moment in trying to help create jobs and support entrepreneurs. And they passed the Jobs Act. And the Jobs Act created a new path for selling securities. And that's what investments are, right? They're securities. That's kind of a scary word, but securities just means investments, right, to ordinary investors. And so they created this whole new process called regulation crowdfunding, where you and I can go invest. And so there are all kinds of ideas we have in our mind around this whole process that tell us that we're not smart enough because we weren't allowed for 100 years nearly to do this kind of thing. And so, and we also feel like it's too risky, or we would have been allowed to do it. And of course, I'm not telling you there's no risk, but I am saying, and the law specifically limits how much you can invest if you're not super wealthy, to a fraction of your net worth and income, so that you don't ever bet too much on a friend's business or on a business that you get excited about. But the reality is, if you build a little portfolio over time, patiently, thoughtfully, at an appropriate size and pace, whether that's $50 a month, $100 a month, $200 a year, whatever it is, you keep doing that regularly, and over time, you can build a portfolio that moderates your risk, and it can be a meaningful part of your retirement, as well as a high impact thing that you do. So it's, in terms of solving the world's big problems. So I get excited about it. I really love it.
I love that. I think that is pretty amazing too, that there's kind of this built-in stopgap or a way to keep you from hurting yourself.
Yeah. Unlike the 20s.
Yeah.
I mean, this really is a very different world than the 1920s, because there is so much more disclosure required for these investments now than was available in the 20s. This is a totally different game, even though we're not requiring these small businesses to go through the whole public offering process with all of those underwriting and disclosures. Still, if you're raising a little bit of money, you still have to make some meaningful disclosures about the business. And so people know what's going on, and you end up with a little reporting requirement every year. You have to give people a little financial report and tell them how you're doing. So it's really creating a very healthy marketplace for investing for ordinary folks.
And I like the idea too, that there is this accountability. I mean, there's still going to be risk no matter what, but that's okay. It's not like I'm just, going down to my neighbor and here's $100, good luck with your FD, whatever.
Yeah, right. But I love that we've added just a little bit of formality to this process, because forever, I've run around in these circles for a long time. And before crowdfunding, it was not at all unusual for people to raise money from friends and family, and they'd collect the money without documenting what the money got the investors. They literally had nothing. And so in the rare cases where those entrepreneurs were very successful, they had a big problem, because all these investors said, well, I bought half the company. Right? Maybe you have 10 people who said, well, yeah, I gave you $5,000. I obviously bought half the company for my $5,000. Right? So you got a big problem. And so this new setup requires there to be some structure and some organization. So you can't do silly things like sell half the company 10 times. And so it really does protect investors and entrepreneurs from their own stupidity and allow them to focus on doing the right thing and building successful businesses.
I love that. We're almost out of time. So I just wanted to make sure that we pop up your podcast as well, so that people can see this again, because I want to make sure that you can help grow this message until you're on this station.
Yeah. Well, I hope we'll be on there soon. We can start growing it together.
Yes, exactly. Because what you're doing is absolutely amazing. And I like that it's grown bigger. As you've grown, it's gotten bigger. So we only have, like I mentioned, I don't know, maybe about a minute left. Is there any final thoughts that you would love to share before we wrap up?
Well, yes, of course, I would encourage people to visit Supercrowd, thesupercrowd.com, as well as superpowers4good.com to learn more about what we're doing, to register for events and subscribe to the newsletter and podcast. But I want more than anything, for everyone here to begin to think about themselves as investors. Many of you are entrepreneurs, and I encourage you to think about how crowdfunding can help you if you're an entrepreneur. But we're all investors. Even the entrepreneurs among us are investors. We have an opportunity to do good with the money we invest, even a little bit at a time.
I love that. Well, Devin, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today. It was absolutely fascinating. And I know I learned a lot, so I'm sure everybody else did as well. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here. You're a great host.
Oh, thank you. Well, everyone, that is all the time that we have. We will see you again soon. Enjoy the rest of your week.